All right, Blue Dolphin here with Hoplite Security. We're going to be jumping into today's Hack the Box machine. It's called PC. We're just going to start off with the 60-second overview. Okay, so I don't ramble on. I actually have a timer here for 1 minute. I'm going to give you an overview of this machine. And if you want, you can follow along in my blog, which is in the description down below, cyberdonald.com. I have this whole write-up and this visual workflow there for you to see. So let's start. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we start off with some enumeration here onto our target website, which is, or our target host, which is pc.htb. We learn about over port 50021. There's a remote procedure called WebApp. We do a little enumeration. So then what we do is we fire up Burp Suite. We start walking the application, learning about the functions, how the calls work. We eventually realize there's an entry point. We can't do anything, so we do some SQL map. That helps us find plain text credentials. You can do it manually. I did it with SQL map. I was lazy. From there, we SSH into the target where we do, I bring with us my post exploitation kit. It's Moonwalk. It helps you cover your tracks. From here, we do some internal enumeration. We learn about port 8000 internally. We forward this port to our local host. This lets us browse to that web page where we learn it is pyLoad, which is a web app. There's an easy CVE out there. We pop that CVE. Boom, we've accessed this root for our persistence. What we do is we establish a bashrc reverse shell. 60-second summary. Let's go. Jumping right into things here, we're going to start off with the nemmap scans. We're going to do tac SE for default scripts, tac SV for enumerate versions, and then we're going to do tac reason, which is actually going to show us the specific communication type. So whether it was SYN-ACK, or SYN-ACK-SACK, or SYN-ACK-REST. Again, really cool flag, tac reason. Then we're going to do tac PN for no ping, and -P- for all ports. So we're going to let this run. And looking at the Nmap results, we can see here that we have port 22 open. That's very standard. That's obviously going to be for SSHing back in. And our reason was that we got a SYN with an acknowledgement of that SYN packet, that synchronous packet. Down here, we have port 50051 open. And again, so the service is unknown. So we're going to dive into this a little more. The reason, again, SYN-ACK. You can see here service was unrecognized despite running data. So we're going to go ahead and poke around at that service here. One way to do that is going to be with telnet. So if we send telnet here, it just gives us these like weird escape characters and it doesn't really go anywhere. Another way is going to be using curl, and it just says received, and then it says when not allowed. That's odd. Okay, another method will be using netcat. Then it just says forward lookup host failed. So it's not really going anywhere. So we're going to take this port 50051 and dump it into Google and see what comes up. All right, here's what came up. This is going to be configuring gRPC. So we know that we're dealing with RPC, like the remote procedure commands, but the G stands for Google. So in this case, it's the Google remote procedure commands. Just quickly, high level, if you don't know, remote procedure commands is like a remote workload. So you kind of you make a call to some functions at a remote server, and it takes care of the functions, whatever data you pass it. Kind of like an API, but a little more beefed up. So the next step now is just going to be how do we enumerate this? Well, there's two ways. There's going to be gRP curl. No, there's three ways. There's gRPC curl. So it's called gRP curl. Then there's Postman. Then there's gRP UI. We're going to use gRP UI. That's the user interface. So let me bring you over to the GitHub page for gRP UI. Okay, so this is it here. I do have it already installed, obviously. And again, this machine took me probably 10 to 12 hours to do. So please don't get imposter syndrome to do it in 20 minutes on a YouTube video. You can follow this guide here. I'll make sure the link's down below. And it is using Go, so you have to install it with Go. But we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. And I'm going to connect this to our web page. I'm just calling the command here, gRPCUI. And I'm calling with the plain text flag just to specify that this is not HTTPS. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly. And this is actually going to launch our GUI for us. And you can see here it says the web UI is available, and bam, we are here. All right, let's go ahead and enumerate this web application. There's a couple things. The first thing we look at is the method name. We have three methods: login, register, get info. So the whole situation here, what we're going to be trying to do is we're first going to be registering a user, then we're going to log on with that newly registered user. We're going to retrieve an account token with that user, which will actually let us make log into admin once we have a normal user token. Not sure why. Then we're going to retrieve the admin token. And then from there, we're going to make a successful query with the admin token. And they'll move into the exploitation phase. But for now, again, this is just like the web app walking phase. We're just going to learn a little more about this. Let's do this together. First thing we're going to do is register a user. We're going to enable the strings. I'm going to name the user yellow. We'll hit invoke, and we'll immediately get this. Congrats, an account's been created. Okay, let's log in with user yellow. Again, enable the strings, pass the command username yellow, password yellow, we'll invoke, and you'll see here we get this response trailer. This is a token, so we're going to copy this. Make sure you don't copy the B at the start or those quotes. And you can see here again, this is a token. And the reason we need this token is just let me show you here. So if we actually go log in and we try to log in as admin, for example, this account we'll find out actually exists. We didn't create it. I actually just logged in. Can't even believe that it worked. All right, well, you know what? Forget what I was saying. I swear that didn't work when I first did this. So you can log in with just admin, grab the admin token here. And remember this ID 210, we're gonna go over here to get info. We're gonna create token. We're gonna pop that value in. We're gonna say ID 210. We're gonna hit invoke. And it's going to say message, will update soon. Well, that's odd. So we can play around with this a bit, try different numbers, try strings, play around. But ultimately, we want to get in with SQL map and Burp Suite so we can do some SQL injection and target the database in the backend to get some plain text credentials. The best way to do that, Burp Suite. Let's fire it up. Okay, I got Burp Suite fired up here, as you can see on the left. Our proxy browser here. We're going to go ahead and do this get info request again as admin. We'll hit invoke. Boom, here it is. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually save this item locally. We're going to call it burped, overwriting the previous file. And now we're going to fire up SQL map and pipe this in. Let me show you what that looks like. The benefit of this is we don't have to do it manually, which you can actually do manually. There was a way to go through and enumerate this manually and play around with it, but I was kind of lazy and rushed. So I'm just doing it the lazy way, honestly. So I'm calling SQL map-r for request, and the requested file is going to be burped. We'll hit enter. It's going to play out here, and it says, ooh, we have an error. Oh, I'm just a noob, made a character mistake. Let's re-enter it. Okay, there we go. So it worked. So it found an injectable parameter, which of course was the ID parameter that we had passed. That was 210. What we're going to do here is we're going to escalate this a little bit because we did find an injection point. So now we want to expand on that. Right before we do that, I do want to point out that what was interesting is when we intercepted this RPC packet request, you could see here a few headers I hadn't seen before, including the security fetch site, security fetch mode, security fetch destination, X requested with. You see here it says XML HTTP request. I thought that was interesting. And then of course we have a CSRF token. I know in my blog it says CSRF, so I should probably take that out. I don't think this is like an actual CSRF. I'm a little confused. If you know, please let me know. What we're going to do here is, in order to escalate, we're going to type out our command here as tables and account. And the reason for that, so what that means is we're doing SQL map, we're call a request file, burp, and now we're going to do tables and account. And the reason for that is this was guesswork. I'm kind of embarrassed. That's how I figured it out. I always do this. Usually every database with customer info has a table called account or accounts or username or customers. So in this case, when you do call tables, and you know what, bear with me here. Sorry, I'm just going to call -batch so I don't have to manually press enter. And you'll see here we get two tables. So we have accounts and messages. So now all we have to do is add the dump command. And it's just literally going to dump out that info. Super simple. And we're going to get our credentials. Boom, there we go. User SAU, here's your password. So we're going to go SAU, SSH, SAU at, and it worked. We are in his user SAU, SAU, however you pronounce that. We'll type who am I. You can see we're user SAU. What we're going to do here is first we check the sudo list permissions. And it gives us like kind of a, well, it just gives us nothing. It says we may not run sudo on localhost. So now we'll do a quick netstat check, and we're going to do, I always forget which flag it is. Oh boy, that didn't go well. Oh, hang on, I think I saw what we were looking for. So I ran netstat-anon, and perfect, right here, we see that we actually have port 8000, and it's listening on the local host. So the way to get that port, because of course we can't access it, we can curl it. We can go curl 127.0.0.1 semicolon 8123. And you can see here it talks a little bit. We can tell it's a website because it's doc type HTML and just the context that's going on here. So let's port forward this, and then we can actually browse to it from our local host at the application layer. Because right now we can't do anything at the application layer because we're in over the terminal. So we're very limited. Here at the SSH command, we're port forwarding by saying SSH with this user into this machine, and then listen over port 8000 and forward the traffic of localhost over port 8000. And localhost is of course going to be us. Let's go ahead and send that. We have to put in our user, password. Okay, and it suggests that it's done. Now what we do is we just simply browse over there. We'll go 127.0.0.1 over port 8000. And it's forwarding all the traffic. Perfect. Well, all the traffic on port 8000. So you can see here we have pyLoad. Okay, well this is cool. So what do? Well, you just dump it in Google. It's literally that simple. pyLoad in Google. You're going to see there's like some very particular CVEs and some very prominent ones, and they work. Let's give it a shot. Now it just occurred to me, you're probably wondering, how did we know what version it was? Well, we didn't really. I did, however, run nmap on the local port, and you can see it gives us this like cherry pie WSGI server business, but it eventually says, pyLoad here and about a requested resource. So a little guesswork involved, unfortunately. I hate to say that, but that was just kind of the reality of the situation. Taking a look at the CVE here, this is CVE 0297 on ExploitDB. We're looking at the payload. This is the big thing. The payload's simple. We're sending a request, so this can be done with a curl request, and we have a variable where we're just importing our Python library. So this variable here, the JK one, is actually, if you look at the GitHub code where the change was, this was vulnerable because this leads to an eval statement. So we're essentially calling eval Python library, OS system, passing a command for command injection, and then the payload, which is function, package, crypted. I don't really understand this stuff. Then we just need to add the target directory. So let's jump over to the command line here, and we can do that quite simply. And sorry, when I say simply, remember this box took me like 12 hours. So don't, I don't want anyone to feel like that they're going to have imposter syndrome after watching my video because I'm doing this in 20 minutes. No, seriously, it took me weeks to solve this box and about 20 hours that I had counted. This is my payload here. What's going on is we're essentially just going to be copying the payload and just swapping out the command. It's literally that simple. And in this particular case, what we're going to see is we're going to copy bin bash into temp boom, and we're going to change permissions on it, blast them out of the water for temp boom. And of course, temp boom is just the shell. So boom is the shell. I should have named it something else. We're going to run this. I'm not sure if it's going to work that simply. Let's see here. I feel like it might be a little too good to be true. Yeah, okay. So it just said that the connection was refused. I had intended that to run it as our user who was connected in. So that's my bad. I'm just going to be connecting back in as our user, which I think we are connected over here. Perfect. Okay, so running the command now. Oh, wait a sec. I'm kind of a fool and I forgot the most important part. That's curl. So let's pop this command in again. You can see here, curl, and then we have JK, which again, if you look at the GitHub change, this was an eval statement. So we're evaluating py import OS system, our command injection here, boom, which is just copying the shell. And then the payload, didn't really understand the rest of it. We can look through here, but again, I don't really understand what I'm looking at here. If we want to learn more, we can just go over to the actual GitHub page for this, learn all about it. But let's go ahead and send this off. Now I'm trying to keep these videos short and sweet. It says could not decrypt, this is good. So now what we do is we jump over to the temp directory. And we see there, do you see that? Boom, right there. Now what we have to do is, I think call boom, because it's a bash shell, and p. -p means we inherit the permissions on it. So let's just check. Let's go list all -la, and you'll see boom there with root privileges and the s. This little s is the suid, so that means we can inherit the privileges. So we'll go boom and -p, and we should be in here as user, and we are root. That's it. Great video. Now, as far as post exploitation goes, I forgot to do it in this video, but I will be doing the future ones. I use something called Moonwalk. So Moonwalk is a 400 kilobyte single binary executable that can be used to clear traces during Linux exploitation penetration by leaving 0 traces on the system. there's no timestamp. So what happens is as soon as you get in, you bring in Moonwalk, it saves state of the system logs pre-exploitation. And then when you're done, you call it again. It actually reverts that state, including the file system timestamps. And this is not to be confused with Spacewalk, which is an open source Linux system management solution. As far as persistence goes, I like to do the bashrc file. I like to jump in there because what you're doing is you're customizing a user's bash shell. So you can customize it and just pop a reverse shell in there that executes every time that user does in fact connect. Anyways, that's it. See you in the next video.